everyone, this is Jason with SJR Power Sports, here to bring you some more tips and tricks. Today we're going to kind of step away from the wrenching part of it, and we're going to talk about checking out a bike that you're looking to buy. What things you should look for, what things that you should be aware of when you're buying a used bike. Let's go look at a bike we have in the shop today. So with my 30 years in the business, in the power sports industry, I've come across a little bit of everything, buying and selling at the dealership level and also private sales. There's lots of things to look for. Let's start with just the quick and easy, the overall appearance of the machine as you walk up to it. As you walk up, you want to be looking for things like damage to external components, the tank, the fenders. Is there upholstery damage? This particular bike that we chose today has a tear in the seat, okay? So not a huge deal if you're looking for a fixer-upper, but if it's something that you want to turnkey and ride and you don't like the look of it, that's something to note. And maybe work on a deal with whoever you're buying it from. But the closer things that you want to look at are things like, did this look like someone just wiped it down quick before you showed up? Or is this a bike that's been well maintained? And some of the things you can look for there, if they just wiped it down quick, you can look in kind of the nooks and crannies, get up on top of the cylinder heads, kind of back in behind the bags, on the side covers, smaller areas that people wouldn't wipe down in a quick moment, but if somebody maintained their bike properly and very well, you'll see that it remains clean everywhere on the bike. You'll also want to take a look at things when you first walk up, just visual things like tires. What do the tires look like? You're looking for extreme wear on the tires. Is there tread left? And you don't have to be an expert. You can tell if there's good tread. You can tell if it's, and we'll show you an example, you can tell if the tread's mostly gone. There are some things that you'll want to look for, like cupping on the tires. And what you can do is you'll kind of turn the bike, get it straight, and take a look down over the front of the tire. And cupping is a raised and lowered surface on the tire. Now, the tread might be absolutely great, but they ran it with low tire pressure, which is what causes the cupping effect. What'll happen though is if you purchase that and you go riding and you're riding in corners, it'll actually feel like it's kind of wobbling back and forth when you go into your corners because of that raised and lowered surface. So that's something where you'll need a new tire. If you're going to buy the bike, you need to know that you're going to need a new tire on it. Aside from that, you want to look at the wheels as well. You want to check for dents, and don't be afraid to move the bike. You're going to roll it backwards, you're going to roll it forward and get every area of the wheel, and you're looking for dents in that wheel. Don't hesitate to take your time when you're looking over the bike. You want to look at everything. This is a major purchase for most all of us. You want to make sure that you take your time to look everything over. Okay, something else that you'll want to take a look at is the exhaust. What you're going to do, first off, you want to make sure the bike is cold before you start really grabbing the exhaust or touching anything like that. And there's another reason that you'll want to have the bike cold when you come take a look at it. And I'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. But first off, make sure the bike's cold. And you want to check the exhaust. And it's just a physical inspection. You're going to take a look, make sure all the hardware's there. You're going to make sure that it's not loose anywhere. There's not broken brackets. And this exhaust, I'm grabbing hold of it pretty good, and it's not moving at all, so it's solid. You might want to take a look at the back of the exhaust, make sure there hasn't been any heavy modifications done, personal modifications that somebody has done. And that's pretty much it. You're going to check underneath. Don't be afraid to get down underneath, get on the ground, and make sure that you don't have any rust, any corrosion issues, problems with the exhaust. This one seems to be in pretty good order. Moving on from that, you want to take a look at the frame. While you're down there at the exhaust, you can take a look underneath and see if there's any significant frame damage. But the most important thing with the frame is actually taking a look at the steering stop. We'll take a look at that. It's at the front, the steering neck of the frame. Usually at the bottom. They're in slightly different locations depending upon the bike. But what you're looking for is damage to that steering stop that occurs in the event of a crash. So that'll tell you, if you have damage to the steering stop, that'll tell you that this bike has been in an accident, which may not be something that you want to take part in. So as far as a purchase. Also with the frame, kind of with the frame, would be the steering. I'm going to get on the bike here because you're going to want to do this to test out the steering bearings, and the way to do that is to grab the front brake and push forward and backward, and what you're looking for is movement, or even sometimes if it's loose enough it'll be a kind of a knocking noise, but you'll definitely feel movement back and forth. And what you're doing is checking the steering bearings for tightness or wear, and that's important as well because that can be a significant job on particular bikes. So while you're doing that and you've pushed it up and down, you may want to take a look at, if you can on the bike, the forks. What you're looking for, and in this particular model you can't really get to them to see if you have fork seal leaking. You've got oil in those forks, and what happens is you're pushing them up and down. That's going to tell you right away if you grab a hold right above the seal, and on this particular bike you can't see it, but on a lot of bikes you can actually grab the fork tube and it'll have light oil film on it. In some cases the film might be heavy. And in the case of a bike like this where you can't really get to it to see it, if it's bad enough, you'll actually see fork oil kind of, or a stain of fork oil having had run down the forks. And sometimes those can even get on the brakes, and that makes it a safety hazard. So you want to take a look at that while you're on the bike as well, and I didn't do it while I was sitting here. Kind of compress the rear suspension, make sure that everything feels smooth, there's no squeaks, no problems there. While you're down at the front forks, it's a good time to check out the brakes. What you'll need to do, and be a good idea to grab a light if you got it. That'll help you visually inspect the brakes. While you are on the bike, it's a good idea to kind of roll it back and forth. Make sure that it rolls smoothly, that the brakes are not sticking. Calipers can stick if the bike's been sitting for a long time, and you apply the brakes, you let off of the brakes, and then the bike still does not want to move because the calipers are sticking on the brakes. So that's the first step, is you want to make sure it moves smoothly. Second step though, is to actually get down and physically look at the brakes if you can. It's good to have a light with you when you do that. And what you're doing is you're going to have to get down in there and see if you have pad thickness. Every bike's different as far as I don't know if you can see that in the video, hopefully you can. Every bike's different as far as pad thickness and what stock or what the spec is on it. But you'll want to take a look and make sure that there is some pad there at least to make sure that this bike hasn't been ridden with brake pads gone. That will end up damaging the rotor as well. So you would do the same for the rear on this particular model. A little bit difficult to get the camera back in there, but you do the same. And in the rare instance where you're dealing with a bike with drum brakes, there's actually an indicator on that drum externally that'll tell you where the wear is on your brake shoes. If you like what you've seen so far, please like, share, and subscribe to SJR Power Sports. So while you're sitting on the bike, there's a few things that you're going to want to check out. You'll want to take a look at the fuel tank. In this particular instance, it's got a keyed fuel cap. A lot of street bikes do. You'll pull that off and you'll want to take a look inside as far as you can. It's great to have a light to look down in there if you can. And what you're looking for is a couple of different things. You're looking to see if it's rusty inside. If you have rust issues, that can lead to fuel issues. Rust in the tank will try to make its way through the fuel system. Also can, in some cases, the age of the bike, it could be rusted so bad that the fuel tank actually has issues. But you're also looking for contaminants in the fuel. You can kind of swish it back and forth and see if you can see any kind of debris or anything like that. The key element is to make sure that it's clean with no rust. Another thing to look at, especially on older units, is if it doesn't look rusty, but it doesn't look like metal down in there, it kind of looks like a white, kind of a cream color, that means that the tank has been lined. Something you want to be aware of and be cautious of. That liner only lasts so long, and you don't want to have that kind of problem down the road. You'll end up having to replace the tank. So that's the first thing to look at while you're sitting here. Then you're going to want to take a look at lever function. We already talked about the brakes, so you should know about that, but you should check the fluid level. Kind of hard to see on this one with this cup holder on it, but you're going to look to see that the fluid looks fairly clean, kind of a tan color, gold color. If it looks very dark, close to black, the fluid needs changed. You also want to know that the fluid level is above the line that's on the actual master cylinder. On the other side of it, you've got a clutch on this particular bike. You've got a cable operated clutch, and with cable operated clutches you want to make sure that you have a small amount of free play. This particular bike has what looks like the proper amount of free play on it. If you come up to a bike and it has no free play, or when you grab it it's a solid feel right from that point where it's tight, that could indicate that you have clutch issues. It could be constantly wearing on those clutch plates, and that's something that a test ride would probably prove out, and you can tell whether the clutch is slipping, but it's something to definitely be aware of. You want to check that free play. And again, if it's a hydraulic clutch, it's going to be much like the brake fluid. You're looking for that good color, you're looking for the level, and good actuation. Is it a smooth actuation, whether it's cable or hydraulic? Do you have any kind of notchiness in it? Is there a pop or anything like that if it's a cable? On this particular one, we've got good free play and a nice smooth movement, so it's working like it should. And that kind of is the end of sitting on it and checking out these controls. The next step would be actually to start the machine up. When you set up a time to come take a look at a machine, if you're coming to take a look at it, you want to ask that they keep the bike cold when you first show up. We talked about earlier, you know, you're wanting to check the exhaust and grab it, so it needs to be cold, but this is the more important reason. You want to know that this bike runs properly, and a hot bike can cover up, if they've got it hot, they've had it running, it can cover up a lot of running issues, fuel delivery issues, whether it be carbureted or fuel injected. So you want to see how it starts up cold and how it warms up. Does it take a long time to warm up? Is there running issues? Do you have to leave the choke on for way too long? You really should be able to fire the bike up, even if it's a carbureted where you have a choke, and get that thing off a choke within a few minutes. And the warmer the weather is, the less time you have to have choke on. You shouldn't have to leave it on very long at all. Fuel injection, you want to make sure when it's cold it is running properly. And while you fire it up and let it warm up, you're checking all the other functions. You want to check all your electrical functions. You're checking, does the left and right turn signals work, or do they work? The hazard lights, the high and the low beam, the horn, does it work? Sounds like pretty minor, but it's huge. You want that horn working when you pull away. Does the kill switch work on the right handlebar switch? Basically make sure that all your electrical functions, does the meter seem to light up and work? Are there any check engine lights? Are there any indicators that are warnings that come up? And then you can talk to the seller about that at that point in time and determine whether it's something you still want to take on. But these are the kind of things that you want to look for while you're letting the bike warm up. Hopefully the seller will allow you a test ride. Some private sellers will do that. A lot of dealers, you can't do a test ride when you purchase the bike. But what I would say, if you have an issue when you pull away, whether private or dealer, but especially with dealer, you have to go back immediately. Come back, talk to them about it. Don't wait 2 weeks and say it was a problem right from the start. It's something that needs to be tended to immediately if you want any kind of help in that situation. So let's move on to, I'm going to step off the bike. We're going to take a look at some of the driveline. So when it comes to driveline inspection, when you're looking at purchasing a bike, there's 3 different types of drives. This particular bike that we have is a belt drive. A lot of bikes are these days. What you want to do, and the camera's really not going to be able to get into where you're going to look, it's kind of up and under the bike. You're going to look for frays in the belt, cracks in the belt, any kind of issues, the way it's riding on the rear pulley. That's pretty much it. You want to make sure that it doesn't look like it's super loose or super tight, like it's been used improperly. But belts typically are very strong, so you won't run into too many problems, but it's always a good idea to look at them. Now, there are 2 other driveline possibilities. You've got chain sprockets, and you've got final drive, like a rear drive, gear drive. And we're going to take a look at both of those. Let's go take a look at them in a couple other bikes. So here we've got what I was referring to as gear drive, commonly known as shaft drive, a bike here. And what you've got a casing on the back wheel, and it's got a ring and pinion style gear internally. And what you're looking for here is oil leaks. Has it sprayed oil out anywhere? If you get up and under here, which you can't see with the camera, do we have an oil leak of any kind? Sometimes it can simply be a drain plug washer that was seeping a little bit. Sometimes we could have a serious issue. So you want to take a look at that. Aside from that, you can roll it back and forth, but you're really not going to be able to notice any kind of gear problems until you go out on the test ride. Very important to try to test ride when you're dealing with one of these. So let's go take a look at chain and sprocket. So here we've got a traditional chain and sprocket setup. Most of your sport bikes will have this type of setup. And what you're looking for is a couple of different things actually. You want to take a look. Usually it's hard to see the front sprocket. On this one you can, but you can see almost all of them on the rear sprocket. You're looking for the teeth. Are the teeth thin? Are they starting to roll over or kind of cup over? If that's the case, it absolutely needs the sprockets and chain replaced. They need to be replaced as a set or they'll wear prematurely. You can look at the front and see the same thing on this particular bike, but again, it's not common that you can see the front sprocket, so you want to base it off of the rear. When you're looking at a chain, because the sprockets could be okay, but the chain could have a problem, first off, you want to see if it's been maintained properly. You want to make sure that you're looking at a lubricated chain. It's not dry, it's not rusty, anything like that. But you still want to check, you'll check tension. You can have a glove or a rag or whatever. This is a little bit loose right at the moment. You'd have to check the spec on the particular bike. But more important, you want to roll it back and forth and check for tight spots. Sometimes these chains, over age or not properly maintained, they'll get tight spots in them. And you can kind of grab it and roll it along this chain. Honestly, the chain looks like it's in pretty good order. It needs an adjustment and probably some extra lubrication. But that's the kind of thing you want to look for. Sprocket condition, chain condition, and how it was maintained. Okay, we're here on that same R6 that we were checking the chain and sprockets on. Last couple of little checks that we want to do is the oil condition and coolant condition and levels on both. We're going to start with the oil here. And this bike has a traditional dipstick setup, so you'll grab it, you'll unscrew it. So you pull it out, like I say, it's got a traditional dipstick, and you'll wipe it clean. And then you're going to put it back in. In most cases, you're going to just put it back in, not screw it back in. But you'll want to check your manual or check specs on the bike to know exactly how you should do it. So pull it back out, and you can see this oil is clean and at the proper level. So then you can just screw it back in. What you're looking for is clean oil, proper level, but also you want to smell the oil if you can, see if it smells burnt, like we've got a burning clutch issue, something like that. Make sure it doesn't smell like gasoline. Sometimes if there's a fuel delivery issue, it can dump excess fuel into the cases and you'll get a fuel smell in your oil. So those are the few things that you want to really check there. So we've got that tightened up. We'll take a look at coolant now. And that's just right up here on the right on this bike. Typically what you're going to want to look for is a good green neon color. You'll look into the bottle, and the camera's not going to show you real well here, but this is the bottle that you'll look at. You can also, if you can get to it, you'll want to check the cap. You can see the cap right there. So you'll unscrew that, make sure of course that the bike is cold when you do this. You'll unscrew that, and what you're looking for is like I say, a neon green color, that it's full where it should be. If you have kind of a brownish color in there, you could have an engine issue. You could have some oil in that coolant. And you just want to make sure that it looks like it should. Neon green, proper level. Okay, we're just about wrapped up with the inspection process. One last thing that I wanted to talk about was the title. You should be getting a title with any bike purchase that you're making. You want to make sure that the 17-digit VIN on that title matches exactly to the 17-digit VIN on the bike. It can create ownership problems going forward if they don't match. So that's the last thing that really you want to make sure of before you take delivery of the bike. Of course, if you're unsure or uncomfortable with any point of the inspection process, you can bring it into SJR Powersports and we'll inspect it for you. Be glad to. Thanks for watching this used bike inspection video from SJR Powersports. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe. We are going to have more content coming in the line of Powersports videos.